opening up. Here we go. Woohoo! Ready to roll. Getting everybody going. Look at it. It's wonderful. Don't we love our Tuesdays? Yes. Oh, it's so good to see everybody. Awesome. Hey, Sharon. All right. Jim, thank you. Jim's here. Carolyn. Oh, we love it. It's so good to see everyone. And get everybody an opportunity. Hey, Greg, Dennis, Christopher. Oh, so good. Thank you. We have a great program today, so we're super excited. And apparently so are you, because everybody's here. It's good to see everybody. Hope you got to get out and fly. And let's see if we can get Kim in here. She's going to do some shout outs and hello, and give it a quick minute while we open up and allow people to come in and get the ball rolling. Give me a thumbs up. Let's hear it. Did anybody get to go flying? Right? It's been a great week. Yes. Yes. Awesome. All right. That's what we like. I know Jim did, because Jim gets to fly quite often on a daily basis, practically. All right. Awesome. All right. So, Kim, are you able to hear us or see us or anything at this point? Not yet. Clearly she is not. So we're still waiting for my co-host to log in here. She's going to try it again. And so just a quick shout out, right around the corner is commercial UAV, and that's coming up September, first part of September. Anybody want to throw into the chat or maybe give us a thumbs up who might be going? We have some incredible people. Yes. Jim's going. We have several people that are Women in Drums members that are actually going to be there, going to be, I got a couple more thumbs up, going to be moderating panels, going to be guest speakers, have booths. So it's going to be a great show. Again, it's coming up in the first part of September, and that will be in Las Vegas, right? Awesome. So with that, not sure if Kim's able to connect. It looks like we've got two Kims so far right now. And so just I'm not sure she's able to log in. So
when one Kim is just not enough, you have two.
We have two, right? The more the merrier, right? Awesome.
Okay, here we go. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
No?
Hey,
yeah, okay.
What is
cool.
that, Verizon?
Good morning,
Yes,
everybody. Talk amongst yourselves. Hi, David.
So our guest speaker is here, and we are so excited to have him here. And so I'm going to go ahead and, since now Kim is are all here and ready to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker. We'll segue over to you, Kim.
Can you get me out of that one with my background? I can't seem to get out of there. Can you do that, Desi, or not?
I can.
It looks like you have one on your computer and one on your phone.
I know, because I couldn't get through. Anyway, let me just introduce David. So I actually connected with David at the UAV Commercial Expo last year. So we had connected like via phone, and then I was talking to somebody, and we all had masks on and stuff, and I was talking to somebody, and I'd not met David in person, and he walks by, he goes, "Is that Kim Players that I hear?" And then that was our connection. So thank you, Desi. So anyway, so I met David, and since then we've been rocking and rolling, right, David? We have David's great. He's such a great networker. He's so passionate about what he does. Like that's what's so cool about what we do, is we get to choose who we want to hang around with, right? That's what we love about this. We get to choose. So no drama. Let's get in there and hang out with the right people. So Dave and I, Dave has started the PA Drone Association. I'm part of the committee, and just meeting really awesome people. And then on top of that, we just had our first PA drone mixer, which we had about 50 plus people there. And that was really great. Just people from all over, in Pennsylvania. Woo, 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 Pennsylvania, right? So, yeah, David and I, we're like passionate about like waking up the East Coast. But David is such an advocate for what we do, and I'm super excited for him to come on. Thank you so much, David, for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your passion and your professionalism. You rock. The show's yours.
Well, thank you, Kim, and thank you everyone for joining me today. I'm really about trying to get as much interaction from all of you as possible, but of course, it would be behoove of me if I didn't describe to all of you what the PA Drone Association is, why it's important, why we created it, and really with the goal of talking about kind of advocacy and what that means to you and what it means to me as not only the PA Drone Association, but me as just me and my consulting firm, which manages PA Drone and kind of a lot of the different topics that we do. So I'm gonna share my screen here. All right, hopefully everyone can see that.
It's perfect.
So as Kim mentioned, I am the co-founder of PA Drone and did that hand in hand with the Aviation Council of Pennsylvania, where they started seeing an influx of members joining in the UAS community. And at that point, back in 2019, it was a little bit more contentious between airports and the unmanned systems. Really looking at the only piece of drone legislation that had passed in Pennsylvania and took away some powers from municipalities because it covered state level preemption. So essentially they tasked me with, am I going to be moving back to Pennsylvania, and we'll fund you for 3 months and see if you can make it from there. So I'm still here, which is good. And so is the PA Drone Association. So I did something right. So what we created back in 2019 was a 501c6, just like many of the other organizations that you've created, and really put a focus on trying to encompass the entire, not only drone community, but everyone who touches or has some type of responsibility with drones, ranging from FPV recreational pilots who tend to be the renegades all the way up to Department of Defense Group 345 manufacturers. I mean, it's a wide swath of drone operators, as well as really looking at which industries, which enterprises are really adopting this technology and who are the potential people. So I would say only about half of our members are actually drone people. We have, the telecom industry, we have the utilities industry, we have construction and engineering and all those different people that utilize UAS, but it's not their main focus of business, but UAS is the common thread that goes through it. And really what happened is whenever we had our first initial kind of strategic planning session was to determine what our mission was. And, we looked at a lot of other organizations and things that we are trying to emulate, but really have that Pennsylvania touch and try to elevate Pennsylvania in the discussion, because whenever we came in 2019, it was very strong in a lot of North Carolina, North Dakota, now Ohio's in the game, watching all these other states that are taking the lead. And we wanted to figure out what was it specifically, besides just obviously the investment, how do you get that level of investment? And we did that through, and we are doing that right now through kind of our mission. One is the influence piece. So yes, advocacy is lobbying. It is going up and creating those relationships at the Capitol. But very important that, I like to say that the influence is not only you are an educator to the politicians, but you're also a translator. We can get really lost in our alphabet soup in the aviation community. We can get lost in the technology side of things, and everyone specializes on their things. So I like to say that I know a little bit about a lot, enough to be dangerous in about every single category. And so being able to translate across industry and across all those different sectors is really important. Obviously, the networking, as Kim mentioned, having, now that COVID is calming, knock on wood, and we were able to get people together and hold our Elevate PA networking hour where people are just really driving to try to get together. And they can't all go to those national conferences, so we try to move across the state. And lastly is kind of on the creation side. You hear about the R&D, you hear about all these different opportunities, but how do you create those opportunities? What type of things can you look at? So we created our mission, and then we really created a committee structure that went out from beyond it. So we created our 4 standing committees, soon to be 5 in a month here. Is one, our networking and collaboration committee, which Kim gladly sits on. And as I'm sure you all aware, Kim is just a powerhouse and always looking at great ideas. We have our legislative affairs committee, which is pretty much self-explanatory. Our event planning committee, which really focuses on our annual conference. And then our workforce development committee, which focuses on that training portion, as well as trying to connect the path towards from pre-education all the way through the educational system and up to hopefully employment. And soon to come is our public safety committee, which will actually be a conglomeration of all of the state's public safety organizations coming underneath the Drone Association, so that whatever happens with drone and public safety in Pennsylvania is then disseminated through all of the public safety system in the state. These are just an example of some of our companies that are members. We have a lot more, and I should have put a Master Your Drone thing on there as well, as Kim is a happy member of PA Drone. But it's just really looking at that diversity of different businesses and individuals that come on board. So a little taste about what our workforce development committee consists of. So Pennsylvania, whenever I first founded, we held our first advocacy day up at the state capitol. And people's comments were, we always viewed Pennsylvania as the dead zone for drones. Like, they don't seem like they're doing much of anything. And hopefully we're starting to make a difference. I see a difference happening, but we have a lot of assets within the Commonwealth that even people within don't realize is right in their backyard. So within our workforce development committee, we have all of the PASHE schools, so the state system of higher education, as well as big powerhouse universities like Penn and Drexel and Carnegie Mellon, really big names in the robotics industry that are doing a lot of things, as well as standards organizations like ASTM International is headquartered outside of Philly, and SAE International, and One Sky. There's just a wealth of individual knowledge. And so trying to bring all of those individual efforts underneath a common umbrella so that everyone kind of knows what the other is doing enough so that we can try to involve everyone. The most important piece that I see outside of our members and our committees is kind of organizational relationships. Collaboration is the key to success in this industry. Collaboration not only amongst drone organizations, but collaboration amongst other organizations as well. And we have really forged that relationship looking at things of not only our national drone organizations and national government entities, but even local drone organizations. For example, we have the Pittsburgh Drone Masters, and even our local recreational pilots in the AMA and AOPA. And we have the Technology Council of Central Pennsylvania. We want to be a resource for them, so they're not having to reinvent the wheel, but we're able to provide the expertise that they need and also that location. But developing those relationships is probably one of the top things that I always look at doing is being able to utilize others' resources. And, if we all chip in a little bit, we're able to provide value to everyone. So this is where I really want to get you guys involved is so, advocacy is a very loaded term. It can mean a lot of different things. A lot of times, you think of two things. You think of advocacy on the legislative side and what that means to our key decision makers, whether or not it is within, in our case, the General Assembly, or even if you're looking at the federal level, or advocacy to the general public. And so whenever we say we're trying to garner support or recommend something for a particular cause or policy, if we say we support drones, what does that mean? So, what types of things are you guys doing right now to be an advocate for the drone industry? I kind of want to kick it to you guys, and I'll share what we have done on the advocacy front kind of afterwards. And so I hope everyone unmutes and looks at, you can put it in the chat, you can unmute and talk, but what different activities? So Desi, as you put in there, is networking with women and drones, which is really good to understand who else is going there. So networking amongst each other. Is anyone active in their local government or state government, or even at the federal level? Is anyone doing anything along those lines?
So David, now that you're mentioning that, if you're not getting a lot, I'm on my phone, so I can't see things like I normally do, but what is it, how does one get, their foot in the door for something like that? Like, what does that look like to contact and introduce yourself to like federal level, or, what all the different organizations that you just mentioned? Educate us.
Yeah, so it really, some of it's cold calling, and the importance of a network is something that has been bestowed upon me from my father, who was a business development executive growing up. It's all about who you know and the connections that you make, and you never know when you're going to need someone down the road, and seeing how everything ties together. But advocating, I like to say, what is my common, if I was to say, what is that particular cause or policy, is my goal from the Drone Association is to create drone champions. To put it very bluntly, is I want to create drone champions, because all of you are already drone champions. All of you are bought into this, and are able to really be kind of that voice. But the people that I really want to target, and what we want to look at, is who could be using drones, who should be using drones, and what should they know. And so part of that is just getting really involved in those ancillary organizations, is like ACEC Pennsylvania, the American Council of Engineering Companies, is introducing myself to their executive director and saying, hey, I know some of your members may be using drones. I have the drone expertise. Let's collaborate and do something together. And we did that.
I think Jim Bonardale had something he wanted to add in there.
Associated with it's still in its bit of its infancy, but standing up an advanced air mobility association start looking at grants for educational purposes. Includes the Texas UAS Works. Julian Russell is the president there. He has started looking at development of a broader network, and so he has some connections with folks in Congress, and so that may be something that that could be a good connection for you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm all about making new friends,
Right.
and learning from each other and what we can do. The challenging part where I think where a lot of you feel really comfortable is obviously networking amongst each other. But part of the challenge is looking at the political realm. Reality, as I explained earlier, is we're educators, translators, and the experts, because you can't have the same expertise that the industry does. And so, a lot of that is kind of what information do you want to put in front of them? So what is and so what along with that is research, is you have to understand what each of those individuals that you're going to, who has no stance in the drone industry currently outside of, my child got a drone for Christmas, or my neighbor or my friend has a drone. And I get comments all the time is, man, they really have an association for everything now whenever I come in saying I'm with the PA Drone Association. And they don't realize the expanse in which the drone industry kind of touches everyone. And so that's where prioritizing the information so much information with them that what's their takeaway is the drone industry is a lot. It's a lot. It's my responsibility. Organizations or even your own companies, you have to realize what that number one ask is. A lot of the times you have meetings, they need from me. What do you need from me? I get that all the time. Having those meetings, so your local constituents, your local legislators are really important, because you live in their area, so you're a constituent of theirs. That has value. But then you start looking at who is in leadership, you start looking at who actually has control to move things, and who will be more genuinely interested in your specific efforts. And so the questions that I put in here are things that you should be asking yourselves. Is how do you prioritize your net? When do you pull out? When do you ask for the chits? Is, you create this relationship and you don't consistently want to go to the same person asking and asking and asking. So having that type of knowledge is good to look for, where like we within Pennsylvania, we have our transportation committees in our House and our Senate. Well, we know that the Republicans control both the House and the Senate. There's 2 chairs to each committee, a majority and a minority. And so we're going to go to the majority chair people of each committee, because more than likely any legislation that we move or any of their interest is going to go into transportation. And so we really focus a lot on those transportation chairs. And that's where we start building that relationship and inviting them to different activities, et cetera. So the name. So Bill, I know you put in there, so you need on economic impact, employment opportunity. Is always tuned into the same radio station. What's in it for me? What I like to say. And legislators are the same. What's in it for the state to buy in or do whatever your ask is doing. And so looking at economic impact is a great example of a quantitative data source that you can put into things. And so how do you go about implementing that? What is the goal of your action? We say, obviously, the feds are the regulator of the airspace, but as we continue to evolve, this or very little role in aviation outside of, dependent on your state or locality, besides zoning and licensing airport. We're asking them to be aviation experts and have knowledge. And so it's challenging. And what's even more challenging is within the industry, where everyone's goal is success for everyone. What raises that tide for all drone users? Challenging, I know. it is very challenging. So,
hey, David, I was going to say, just to add on, I have found in my experience that even being proactive, what your Congress or your Senate, your representatives, because at some point the drone topic is going to come up and they're going to look to their staff to say, who do we know that can inform us about drones? And so even if you just call upon them once or twice a year that inquire about whether or not there's any drone activity that they're looking at, and if they say no, you can say thank you and I'll call back again. They're still your representative. And it's so important that they have people that their constituents that they can lean on to, or if you have their calendar, that's what they're there for. That's what they're getting paid for, is just to sit on the drone community and the impact it's going to have, because more than likely they don't have an opinion that's an informed opinion that's pro-drone. So I just wanted to add that in, that people should be very proactive in reaching out to their local representatives or state senators. If you have a chance to go to Washington and visit with them, the same thing. That's what they're there for. I've done that for numerous things, and you'd be very surprised of how open they are to listening when they know that someone in their community or someone that they represent is a subject matter expert.
Absolutely. So proactivity is one really good piece instead of being reactive to some type of language. But the other piece in there that I want to draw attention to is consistency. Is, not just reaching out once, but reaching out a couple different times, depending on what it is that you're working on or what you want to talk about. Because for them to see you as a resource and get in their Rolodex, and so that if drone comes in front of them, they give you a call, that is one of the most important tools that you can have happen. Can't tell you how many times I get emails from staffers or phone calls that are like, hey, so-and-so is having an issue with the drone. We send them to you first. And so we're able to go in and then, wearing the fast team hat or wearing the drone hat or bringing in other resources and tapping on membership to be able to utilize that, because no one hates a bad drone user more than a good drone user. That there is no understatement there, is because you're afraid that they're going to screw it up for everyone. One bad actor could do a lot of things to go against you. So I mentioned earlier that we have one piece of legislation in Pennsylvania that garners drones. So, and Amy, I'll get to your question. I see it there. So, and this is a hot button topic in a lot of states. So we have state level preemption. So in 2018, going into 19, right before we formed up, Pennsylvania addressed its first piece of drone legislation. Some of it is a little bit repetitious, but there was one piece that went into it. So one, it is illegal to surveil someone put someone in fear of bodily injury or deliver contraband into prisons. Those are, with or without a drone, those are already illegal. So that's why that went through. But the most valuable piece as we see it is state level preemption, is it actually put us a little bit ahead of the 8 ball, realizing that there's going to be ways to work it in. And that state level preemption, which it became law in February of 2019, has been challenged 3 times at our state capitol already. There has been other legislation to undo our preemption 3 different times since conveniently the same time the PA Drone Association was found. So knowing that that is important to users is one piece, is just protecting that, and also communicating why state level preemption is important to the industry and the growth of the industry. Just like federal preemption in the air, we have state level preemption on the ground. So let's just kind of look at what other things are happening in Pennsylvania and look at the tools that I'm putting in place that could be of value and hopefully gets replicated. So within Pennsylvania, PennDOT, we're not moving as fast because the state is not as fast adopters, but there is the UAS steering committee within the highway admin within PennDOT, which is about implementing drones in PennDOT projects. Then there was a UAS policy just for employees and contractors. And then they created the UAS task force, which was co-chaired between the Office of Transformational Technology, which ironically is now defunct, and the Bureau of Aviation, and created 3 subcommittees underneath safety, economic development, and urban air mobility. That was created a year and a half ago and still has not pressed forward because the state's not fully investing. But there has been some forward thinking. So the Aviation Economic Impact Study was one piece that the Bureau of Aviation did, and they included UAS in that study. And because of those proactive meetings and having discussions with them, they reached out to the association for some assistance, and I'll cover with that. But you have to look and be aware of a lot of different things happening in the transportation realm that could affect drones. So additionally, we had something in Pennsylvania called the Transportation Revenue Options Commission. It was really about finding new ways to fund things. And so one thing that people, any drone user talks about is, I want free access to the sky. I want to be able to be free to fly. But at the same token, whenever you're asking the state to invest in something, what are you willing to pay? And what is that they're offering that if you're paying for it? Is it going to be mandatory? Is it going to be optional? What does that look like? And so within aviation funding, they looked at the typical traditional jet fuel tax increase. They looked at diverting aviation sales tax into aviation. But the big concerning piece that came in was aircraft registration fees. And they specifically called out UAS as complementing the aircraft registration fee. And for those of you, if any of you are in Washington State or Minnesota, I know those two have a mandatory state registration for UAS, but to large companies, that's a very small fee, but it's the individual pilot that, the entrepreneur that's trying to do things where registration fees start becoming a challenge. And so we already have a federal system. And so this is why it is important to be proactive and also monitoring. So I mentioned the economic impact study. So we were reached out to, the association was reached out to create this UAS economic impact study, not a quantitative, but more a qualitative study. Not putting a dollar value on it, but saying this is why this is important towards economic development. So what occurred is originally at the beginning, they said, we want to do 10 interviews and name 5 industries that UAS is currently being integrated in. And I was like, isn't the purpose of this study to find out what all industries they're being utilized in and talk to them? And so I offered pro bono to the state to offset, where we identified looking not only into our membership, but looking into the network and saying what industries are currently utilizing UAS. And that magic number was 27 different industries in the state where we have companies already utilizing UAS. And so we took the initial study of only 10 interviews, and we had at least 2 companies in each industry vertical. We took it from 10 to 54 interviews. So the Drone Association helped offset the state by 44 interviews and increase this report by that much more. It's been completed for a while. We're just waiting for them to release it. And as I keep telling them, the stuff in that study is probably already going to be old by the time it comes out. So hopefully we can release it. And even within that, we combined some together, but some industry, like I can combined urban air mobility and UTM into one, kind of an overview. But as we're looking at all of those different entities that have some role in the UAS industry, that's how we were able to identify. And so that was just one small example of where the association, actually a lot of time, I think 3 months worth of time, but how we were able to assist and be an advocate, not only for an agency, but for the industry at the same time. So whenever we talked about what can you do that elevates everyone, that creates drone champions, that provides funding, that provides opportunity, what we were able to create and draft and do so was something that I've coined the Unmanned Aircraft Innovation Fund, which is a grant program. And it has pretty much every case use that you can think of. What could be valuable for a small entrepreneur, as well as even, a DoD, DARPA type company. So how can we make it valuable to everyone and get everyone to beat the drum behind this? And also put a piece of legislation in front of them that isn't just talking about what bad things drones can do, but what good things can they do? And so I created this. It's House Bill 1675 and Senate Bill 787, bipartisan support on both sides. And it's a grant program that is up to $30,000 per applicant. And within that program, it is not only just for nonprofits or local governments, but it's also private businesses as well. And so maybe it's a construction company that only had, a Mavic 2 Pro, and they really want to upgrade their equipment and start utilizing a LiDAR system, or they need to train employees or, get more aircraft. This allows them to grow their program. At the same token, someone that wants to start a program like a fire department or public safety entity that wants to start it, this provides dedicated funding sources. So we're not only utilizing the existing, but this creates a dedicated fund towards drone. So we created in the language of, so you can acquire equipment, training, licensing, even developing and testing, even hiring a UAS contractor, even if you just want to utilize drones so that you could maybe utilize a drone in this project to show a cost benefit analysis or something along those lines. And for the larger guys, it can be utilized for matching funds for federal programs. So that was kind of a little kicker that went into it. Now, the golden question that goes into all of this is what's the pot? How big is this pot? And so what happens with that is that's where we start having that discussion. So we actually created this backwards as we were talking about establishing or what the state can do. And the golden question that I mentioned to all of you is, what can I do to help? What's the ask? And in this case, we were talking with an appropriations chair, and he said, how much? And whenever they ask you that question, hopefully you have the answer. And so because we looked at other states, we knew what other states were investing, the average, not New York level investment or North Dakota level investment, but the average, drone program, and it came around $2 million. And he said, $2 million, that's no problem. And so we are working through this right now. And this piece of legislation checks a whole lot of boxes. And whenever I say, what is your goal? What is your priority? If I was to tell you my number one priority at the state capitol right now, it is this bill, is because it'll provide opportunity not only for the industry, provide a great educational opportunity because we're bringing in all those expertise that are utilizing drone programs, showing the value, why is this important? And it builds much more of a need and use for the state to get more involved. The other important thing from an association standpoint is, even whenever I go into meetings, is I say, I am not the expert, I'm just the manager of experts. And the network you need when you need it. So if they're calling me about drone and they want to talk about, drones in agriculture, is we can connect them with people that are doing research on it. We can do people that are doing inspection or spraying right now, or, I need an expert on airspace, and that's where the value of what we're doing networking here is, because you become a piece and going towards that. The other thing that we are advocating for as well is we don't have a UAS management center. There is no designated person that is in charge of UAS within the state. So there's a lot of chiefs, a lot of Indians and no chiefs. And so we're trying to establish a singular point of contact. Just within PennDOT, there are 3 different people that I have to talk to about drones, depending on what the use is about implementing, saving money on bridge inspection, or is it talking about regulation, or is it talking about forward thinking and research and development? Those are 3 different people that I have to talk to. So hopefully consolidating and making those uses are that's kind of an ancillary piece where we try to pull it all into one commonality. So those are kind of some examples of what we are doing within the Drone Association. But what's even more important is what the members are doing and being willing to share and get on that platform to share what hard work you are doing. And it's really about trying to share as much information as you're allowed to share, and finding those opportunities whenever you can do it. It's everyone in the drone industry is working at all cylinders at 150%. Everyone's trying to make money and survive and be alive the next year and become sustainable. And in such a fledgling industry where regulation catches up with technology and will continually be doing that, it is important to become and position yourselves in those advocate roles. And the more you get involved and the more you become part of that majority pushing is that hopefully what you're saying and the constituent is saying is the same thing. So that is all I have in what we're doing, but I really am curious from all of your perspectives. I knew I had a question. I go back up. So I think the question really is finding who is active in drones. So Amy, you had the question about who's active in your city, region, and state. Who is active. One is the organizations. That's a really valuable way. There are a lot of different groups. I mean, Women in Drones alone, not only just a PA drone or AUVSI, or it all depends on what you're doing with the drones, is where a lot of those goes. And that's why I wanted to kind of be all encapsulating, and all encompassing of all those different pieces. But I would definitely say, look at your state. A lot of people ask me, what is the PA Drone Association like? What other states have a drone association. You know, there are the chapters of AUVSI. Yes, that is one piece. Some are super active, some are not. But I would, you know, looking at like Mignon with Aerospace Arizona and having conversations with her, or UAS Colorado, is they do exist, but it's really finding that niche group. But social media is also another great tool. What other questions do I have here?
So who's inspired? Man, Dave, that was great.
Yeah, Facebook drone pages, absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of Facebook pages.
There are a lot.
So Dave, like, what I like about what you said is just like, you know, when you're meeting people, like the Facebook drone pages, you know, it's mostly, like you said, it's mostly drone people.
Yep.
Right. So I remember when we had the mixer, you know, of course, my guests were drone people. David's guests were like, you know, representatives from the state. So it was really interesting because like I was talking to the one representative, he used to be a lawyer, the real tall guy. Anyway, I was talking to him and, you know, we talked a little bit about drones, but we mostly talked about him and what he does. So, you know, that's the important thing about, you know, when you're networking as well, is not just talking about yourself.
Well,
right?
and even, you know, half the time in the networking and things that you go through is, I would say 90%, you know, if you're having a meeting, that's one thing, but if you're going to just a networking hour, my biggest suggestion is 90% of what you're talking about, it has nothing to do with your goals. It is just
Right.
about learning the person, learning about their family, learning about their hobbies, sharing what you do outside of things. Conveniently for me, a lot of my hobbies are the same things that I'm advocating for. But it's all about relationship building, is knowing that they can count on you and you can count on them whenever it comes into that. And that's not only in the political realm, that's anyone is just trying to know them as a person, and know kind of what they stand for individually. And a lot comes from that. You know, wishing people a happy birthday carries a lot of weight.
And also, you know, like being memorable, like when you listen to people, like they remember you, because most people, when you're networking, like that's one of the secrets to networking. In, if you've ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? Dale Carnegie or Andrew Carnegie, you know, it's all about, you know, when you're networking is to be, you know, talking about asking them questions. So my point is this, is that, you know, if you are considering like, you know, carrying on what David's been talking about, you don't have to know all about, you know, how the state runs and all that kind of stuff. You just get in, start networking, let your presence be known, and start asking questions about them. Right, David?
Yeah. And also, you know, one of the key pieces as well is inviting them to our types of events. Is if you're having a drone event, you invite the non-drone people to come in and learn, and be part of that community. And the same token goes, insert yourselves in their events so that you're meeting. I have had 3 different events where people shared with PA Drone and they were like, hey, can you promote this? And I was like, absolutely, we'll post it. No problem. And my next question was, did you invite your local legislators? They're like, no, I didn't think they'd want to come. And so we were able to assist with that. We just sent an email, said, hey, our member is doing this. We really like you to come. And we're exposing people to the industry. And a lot of people are very interested in seeing it. But what's even, you know, you have to be understandable about what is exciting for them to see, because a drone flight's only exciting for so long. I mean, takeoff, landing, that's pretty much the ooh-ah. What's the ooh-ah is what can be done with it in post-process or even looking at a screen. So maybe not even stick time. It's just having them understand the value and how drones are becoming part of their everyday life without them even realizing it.
David, I'm a filmmaker in Southern California, and to your point, this industry is moving away from what the device is to what the device does.
Yep.
And as you have demonstrated here, it's not so much the machinery itself. People are no longer asking, what do you fly? They're asking, what do you do? And it's a really important point. Here in the filmmaking community in Southern California, I get called for the kinds of shots that I deliver to my clients, not necessarily what is the craft that I'm flying. And that utility of this industry, if you will, is our next, if you will, foray into the public.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, as all of you know, is it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. It just becomes a much bigger question of not only integration of our airspace, but integration into business and what you're doing. Greg, from your perspective, the president of PA Drone is a drone production company that does a whole bunch of stuff, the Masters, PGA
He does
Championship.
cool stuff.
Yeah, he does some really cool stuff. But like, even from his perspective, being involved with PA Drone, he's now made a dedicated PA team, where originally it was national, international, even he does the stuff otherwise. But now he's like, I realize I have these assets in my backyard because of the network that he created. And now we're elevating PA pilots and giving them opportunities. And that's the same token elsewhere, is because our network, as we're sitting here, especially in the drone realm, is really national and international. Your connections, people, the expertise is all across the nation. And so you have to realize when to pull in, those outside experts. And so it's a really big balancing act. But I made a lot of mistakes at the beginning. I mean, I'm not shy about that. I mean, I said the wrong thing to the wrong people, and thought it was in a joking manner, but you realize that obviously there's egos everywhere and bruise their ego and because of their past. And I didn't do my research on what their past was. And so that became a really valuable lesson for me is, where did this person come from? What path did they come in? What industries were they involved in? Like I sat in with the chairman of the banking committee, finance committee, which handles banking. And he was like, why are drones so important? Well, our local Members First, which is a credit union around where I live, they have a dedicated drone program as a bank. They're doing property assessments and marketing, and they created a drone program. They're like, I never really thought that drones were valuable to banks. And I was like, absolutely. I think just my catchphrase is name an industry and I can tell you how drones could be utilized in it. And that's pretty much where we're at, is what is valuable to that individual person. Maybe their spouse has a construction company and how drones are being utilized there. There's so many ways to tie this in. You just have to create that value statement to them where you just plant that seed and hopefully you grow a nice drone champion. That's really the big challenge. And the more champions we make, the more that we can affect kind of that public opinion. No one wants a drone spying in their window. No one does. And that is, previously, well, even 2 years ago, whenever you said drone, they think war machine
Right.
or a
Right.
toy.
Yep.
And now it's like, oh my God, I'm watching drone videography every night on my evening news. And and movies that you're watching right now, or even that just from the film and videography perspective is, it's now just a necessity. We have a construction company that would do aerial photography on 1 or 10 of their commercial projects. Now it's just expected. Their customers just expect aerial photography. And so that's what is becoming very, very unique.
So I guess, we're getting ready to wrap up, David. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I mean, I get to be with David. But every time David speaks, I learn something more. And I remember him when we did an aviation air park, alternative aviation day at an air park. And there was a bank tent set up next to Dave. And he was hitting them hard, man. And they were like deer in the headlights. They just didn't really understand, and I learned a lot then there as well. So we're going to wrap it up. Is there any last questions? I would like to say this, really everybody that's on there, we're all advocates. But if you now have more intention when you listen to somebody like David that does it every day, start thinking of being more intentional as an advocate. Because if you've been in the drone industry for any time, at all, most of us have been in, maybe 2 or 3 years, even longer, we've been advocating, but maybe not necessarily so intentionally. So David just assisted us to level up or take it to a new level. So thank you so much, David. Any last questions and comments? And we're gonna wrap it up.
I would just add that your state and local is going to be just as important as the federal as times keep going. I think far too often we get very focused on integration and everything happening at the federal level, but your state and your local connections can be an absolute asset to you if you know how to utilize it appropriately. So don't overlook them. They can really do a lot of great things for you.
Anybody else? Any last comments or excellent information and focus? We got a lot of excellent information and focus. Awesome. Okay, well, great. Thank you, everybody. And thank you so much to Dave. We lost Desi. She cannot hear anything, just like when I got started. So it's one of those kind of wild, days of technology. But look forward to next week. And in August 9th, I just booked Niles he was on America's Got Talent. He did the drone light shows. So he's going to come on. So I'm super excited to have him on because he does something that a lot of people don't do. So,
and he's a proud Pennsylvania company.
Yeah, he is. So he's, August 9th. Yeah. I'm really hitting up. Get ready, everybody.
Even though Niels lives in California, we won't talk about where he lives, but his company is based and everything else is in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's really cool what he does. You can look him up on YouTube, America's Got Talent. So anyway, everybody light shows are amazing. So thank you so much, David, for your time and for your research and for your advocacy and for your mission. We love it. So thank you so much.
Perfect.
And everybody have a great week and get out there and be an advocate. Drones are the future. Have a great week, everybody.
Fly
Thanks,
safe,
David.
folks.
Thank you, everyone.
That kind of wraps it up.